Wow guys, I never would have guessed that my video about Reverend Insanity would have gained as much popularity as it did. Thanks so much for the views and subs. I'm absolutely pumped to keep creating videos about the web novels that have had a profound impact on my life. With that being said, before I get into it, please gently tap the like button. Thanks to you, I have gotten my first 60 subscribers, and I would love to keep making videos that promote our beloved literature to new audiences. Thank you. First and foremost, as a background to people who have never understood the appeal of Chinese fantasy, Xianxia is high fantasy, often in the form of literature written by authors on the Chinese internet. It shares themes with wuxia, where wuxia or wuxia when spoken in English may be much more grounded in reality with some magical elements. Xianxia takes that to the extreme, and for the most part, the magical elements are the main focus of the series. Of course, the best in this genre will also feature sympathetic heroes and well-written side characters, but as these web novels tend to go on for thousands of chapters, most characters end up being temporary. And so if you were to ask me, the foundation for a great Xianxia story is one that develops the world in continuously interesting and refreshing ways, and has an immortal character, or at least one that can provide unique content for hundreds or thousands of in-story years, that starts from nothing and gets to explore the world with you. Let me tell you a story on how I discovered Xianxia, and I think it will help you get the picture. In 2017, I was a second-year university student. I was learning Chinese as I am Chinese American and was interested in learning my heritage language. And I'm just doing my own thing, being a good student. Most of my class are other Asian Americans. Sometimes they're native-born Chinese who just want an easy A. Sometimes they're ABCs like me. Some were Vietnamese and they're just vaguely interested, who knows. But there is this one white guy, and I just had to ask, dude, why are you in this class? And of course, we're all assuming he's gonna say like, oh, I just want to order a Chinese wife in the mail. Or more realistically, he might say, I'm just really fascinated by Chinese culture. I was so prepared to hear that. So when the answer was because he was a fan of Chinese fantasy books, I was like, huh? And then he said, and I quote, oh, dude, the beautiful scenery in those books, the places, the travel, the adventure, the characters, the beasts, treasures. Just imagine if I could read those straight in Chinese. In that moment, somehow, this white dude perfectly described the sense of adventure and wonder that can be found in these novels. A certain beauty that is rooted in traditional Chinese culture as well as modern Chinese culture, which would almost certainly be a fresh experience for anybody who is tired of Western media, for example, superhero movies, crime shows, and reality shows. I can't speak for everyone and how they discovered this genre or how the community came to be, but I think that a lot of us started with novels written by an author who goes by the name Argun. He's written several books that are all loosely connected, but overall are individual stories, such as A Will Eternal, I Shall Seal the Heavens, Against Heaven, and the one that I started with, Renegade Immortal. Argun is highly rated for a reason. He creates some excellent fantasy settings that start off in a world that is convincingly normal and as mundane as ours. But it ever so slowly shows its magical roots, adding in layers upon layers between alchemy, mythical beasts, spells, enchanting weapons, and spiritual development, until before you know it, your boy is flying from planet to planet trying to revive his parents. Reading through Renegade Immortal opened my eyes, allowing me to recognize Mount Tai. I was an impoverished boy in the middle of China. I got the opportunity of a lifetime to train with immortals, but was rejected. And yet, with a fortuitous encounter, I was able to cultivate secretly on my own. I discovered the heaven-defying bead, allowing me to enter another dimension and cultivate while time was slowed to a standstill on the outside, achieving great feats and quickly surpassing my peers. Beyond this, an expert from the ancient era was trapped inside this heavenly treasure who was able to coach me on the demonic path, enabling me again to reach levels far beyond the reach of most immortals. This early on, I was already above most immortals, and by witnessing the death of my parents, I unlocked the G realm, the ability to insta-kill anybody who is within my cultivation realm and mortally injure those above my realm. Renegade Immortal was the first book to ever capture my attention this much. Everything was so fresh, a revenge tale with a ruthless main character. In addition, he's not some cheap, overpowered machine. This character has values, and he's still a hero. He spares the innocent and is compassionate for the weak. In his travels in search of reviving his master and his parents, the main character, Wang Lin, makes friends, enemies, and even falls in love. What a beautiful story of arrogant young masters, jade beauties, and heavenly treasures. I guarantee you, you will love it. However, after reading a couple hundred chapters, getting a feel for the story, getting into it, you may find yourself wanting something fresh. If Argun's world is so beautifully painted, carefully crafted, and has such detailed characters, surely there's more for you to discover in this new genre, right? Well, yes and no. There are a handful of other legendary authors, renowned for their ability to work with the same genre and craft great stories, but ultimately, there will never be a novel like your first, learning about chi, meridians, ascension to immortal, bags of holding, riding on flying swords, and so on. The stories in Xianxia have much of the same elements, even the same characters, the same arrogant young masters, the same beauties, the same vengeance, and the same heavenly artifact that allows the main character to cheat his way to a high level very quickly. I am not discouraging you from reading one of the highly esteemed Xianxia novels. It's definitely a unique experience no matter which one you read. However, when you start with one of the genre's greatest works, what does the majority of the literature left have to offer? If your experience is like mine, you don't need to read another one that doesn't offer anything new, because you know all the main story beats. The main hero is a nobody, he defies the odds, he gets a sacred cheat item, arrogant peers from a wealthy background try and do him dirty, and then the MC slaps him into next week. Eventually, the wealthy young master's family seeks revenge, and the MC goes full-on genocide mode and wipes out a clan with over 10,000 members just for being surnamed Tung. Maybe he faithfully has one wife. Or, as soon to be the God Emperor of the universe, he takes one jade beauty per dimension and builds his own harem. In fact, it's so common with these stories that this meme here outlines it perfectly. The Chad Chinaman, cold gleam in his eyes, about to murder billions of will people. Cripple at a moment's notice.
Kowtow before this daddy.
If reincarnated, does not bitch and quickly decides to become the strongest being to ever exist. Either gets one brilliant waifu, he never leaves, fully grown at 10, keeps growing anyway, never tricks, intelligence too high, jade-like skin, literally zero imperial aura, can reach back in time and kill your family 9 generations before you ever even heard of video. Clothes formed from pure skill.
Unshakable.
Luck to make the heavens
every
jealous.
Cheat item before he
Builds
even starts cultivating.
On the back of returns kindness
every power
and
you can think of
10 times
uses
over.
all of them.
Believe me, no hate to Renegade Immortal. It is seriously a beautiful novel. I just don't really need to read a different novel with my limited time on this planet when similar stories have been told already within one of the arcs found in these novels with over 2,000 chapters. So then where does Reverend Insanity come in? Let's say that you have read one of the classic Xianxia novels. You're familiar with all the tropes. You've lived the experience of a mortal who discovered a cheat item and power leveled to the top. And what if you wanted to experience a world that was familiar but slightly off? Reverend Insanity is a novel about a character you have probably heard about before. A human from our world who is magically isekai'd into the cultivation world. But there's a twist. It's not that simple. This novel doesn't follow a zero to hero model, and it took him over 500 years just to get there. His original journey in this world, the Goo world, was never explicitly told, but we do know some things. Our hero, Fang Yuan, was transmigrated into a righteous path Goo Master sect. This seemed great, as a human from the modern era reborn into feudal China could have great accomplishments using his understanding of modern science, literature, business, and technological innovation, right? It's true. He was hailed as a genius with his magnificent knowledge about modern human concepts that hold our current society together. But during his rite of passage into becoming a Goo Master, he was revealed to have mediocre talent in mana production and mana storage. His primeval aperture, the origin of the self-created primeval essence, only had C-grade aptitude. Suddenly, he was forgotten by his new society as quickly as he rose, reduced to cannon fodder by the elder Goo Master in charge of their village. His family all but forgot about his existence as they started worshipping his biological twin brother, who had an extremely rare grade A primeval aperture, which stores and produces primeval essence extremely efficiently, allowing for a painless cultivation journey. Fang Yuan discovered no cheat item that could turn this around. It was not the isekai that is so prevalent in our fiction. Life in this world is cruel for the majority of its inhabitants. Unfortunately, some people are just simply fated for greatness, just like the venerables of past ages who could reshape the physical world with their thoughts alone, or the heroes who would eventually be born into wealth, security, and an amount of luck that simply rivaled heaven. Eventually, with the disastrous destruction of his village, the mediocre Goo Master known as Fang Yuan, more of a Goo peasant, lost everything and had no choice but to survive as a traveling merchant. What kind of magnificent cultivation journey, walking on the path towards understanding the great Tao, starts with someone so pathetic, who buys items at a low price in Village 1 only to sell them at a slightly higher price in Village 2, all for the sake of feeding and clothing oneself. Fang Yuan lived a life of continuous hardship, just like most of the inhabitants of the Goo world. And in his travels, he eventually found the lifespan Goo, granting him several hundred years of extra life. After all, despite the hardship, who wouldn't cling to their life? In a world this brutal, there's certainly no guarantee of a second isekai. In his travels, as he spent his time, wealth, and human resources in developing his talent to continue developing his aperture, he learned much about the world. That this world was that of hypocrisy. That despite the presentation of righteous forces who supposedly uphold fairness, honesty, and order, the righteous path forces of the world were just as insidious as the tyrannical, demonic path forces. That, in fact, the righteous path forces were even more manipulative, tricking the low-level Goo Masters into sacrificing their own self-interest for the benefit of the group, especially for the leaders of the group. Fang Yuan discovered in his eventful mortal life that despite his best intentions at living a fair and honest life, there simply were no allies. Everyone would put their self-interest above the interests of others, and in fact, the heads of powerful groups only ever maintained the groups because the benefits outweighed the costs. Before I keep going, let me ask you, is the real world so different? Corrupt CEOs and politicians are often in similar situations, yet, in this day and age, mass slaughter and war, while still present and definitely a real-life issue, is far less common than it used to be in the past, and far less common than in this novel. Why is that? Because in almost all situations in the real world, working together and compromising with others yields a better world for the majority. Feeding an army and maintaining nuclear capabilities consumes a lot of resources. Imagine using them in an active war scenario. The usage requirements may increase by 10 to 100x. In the goo world of Reverend Insanity, however, a single individual could wield nuclear capabilities. A single individual can feasibly create better results by themselves than through collaboration, and thus, the people of this world choose to live lives quite wicked.
You're a wicked one, aren't you? Very well. Humans are of the dark, and you are no different.
And yet, isn't it such a human thing to do? Pretend to be virtuous, all the while scheming against your own peers and offspring? In his arduous life, Fang Yuan came to realize the nature of humanity and the ethics of this world, and thus, his enlightenment. Thus, his switch to the demonic path, the selfish path that overtly prioritizes benefits more than anything else. After witnessing his family of the righteous path frame him for various crimes to steal his to-be inherited wealth, after the betrayal of his sect, his family, his friends, even his trusted partners in business in the later parts of his life, Fang Yuan decided that in life, there are only two ways to avoid being stepped on. One was to be like dog shit, something no one would even want to step on. The other was to be strong. Strong until no one would dare to step on you. Upon understanding this, Fang Yuan spent the rest of his life playing by the rules of the game, taking advantage of others for strength, if only for the sake of survival, up until the very day he died. But in his death, he had a trump card, one of the top 10 most mystical goo, the Spring-Autumn Cicada, which would let him be reborn in the past, over 500 years ago, to the time that he was originally transmigrated. This is the story of Reverend Insanity. There is no cheat item, there is only foresight. There is no special privileges, only an attitude tempered by the tragedy of his previous life. There is no wise old master, only reverse manipulation. Jade beauties? No. Young masters? Either an asset or an obstacle to be obliterated. Defeating the strong in self-defense and upholding justice to protect the weak? No. There is no such thing. The cultivation journey that you are already familiar with has all occurred before, not just in the subtext of the novel, but in the real world with the massive amounts of similar stories covering the hero's journey. Reverend Insanity wastes no time in painting a beautiful picture for you. The novel itself was written in a time when its core audience is already familiar with its predecessors and defies your expectations by deconstructing the traditional Xianxia tale of heroes rising up and defeating the big bad villain. With its commentary on the reality of the real world, through its storytelling in its fictional world, and by subverting expectations of veterans of the Xianxia genre, I am confident in labeling the work as a masterpiece, even if the ending isn't written and likely won't be for some time. Within the first 100 chapters, its message is clear. Everything after that is purely for entertainment value and to develop the world. And for that, I must applaud its consistent quality. In this world, Fang Yuan is not the main character. There are plenty of others in this story who have the wealth, the cheat items, and the support by hidden figures to rise up in the world and become great heroes. Their inclusion in the novel solidifies my opinion that this novel is for the veterans of the genre. And for these reasons, perhaps you shouldn't read Reverend Insanity. If you had to sit through the first half of this video, listening to me break down the classic tropes of Xianxia, you must be new. Reverend Insanity is a commentary on our real-world society and functions based off of an understanding of classic Xianxia, and that's why I think Reverend Insanity shouldn't be your first Chinese web novel. But I do think it should be your second. Wow, As I'm writing the end of this script right now, I'm currently at 2,800 words, making this the largest video I've ever written to date. As a show of your support, please hit the like button, as I would love for this video to be promoted throughout YouTube to get more people interested in Xianxia and Reverend Insanity. You guys asked for a follow-up, and I'm absolutely happy to deliver. The delivery style of this video, I think, is deeply inspired by VaatiVidya, one of the original YouTubers whose content was focused on storytelling based off of the Dark Souls lore, and I'm very grateful to have had watched his videos in the past to help me narrate this one. Thank you again for the 60 subscribers I got from the initial video about the Sovereign Immortal Aperture, and thank you so much for the comments and support on that video. Also, be sure to be on the lookout for my next video releasing this Wednesday. It will also be about Reverend Insanity, but be much shorter and much more lighthearted, so subscribe if you haven't done so already. I am the Content Savant, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.